my personality was a classic character who would go into gangs in some ways, you know what I mean?
If you didn't decide then, things could have led, you could have had a different future.
I believe in that the emotional lives of working class people shouldn't necessarily be curated by the middle classes. And then when the street violence was around, I'd seen people like get really hurt. Who do I want to be? How do I want to live? And what do I want in life? Do you know what I mean?
Beautiful. Say that again, Ron.
The world is yours if you believe in yourself. If you start believing and pursue your passion or your life, that can be in a fulfilling work, it can be in a fulfilling sports career, or it can be in a fulfilling arts career. Make your own world happen. Tell your stories that are important to you. Find the people that energize you and galvanize you, and put it out there on whatever channel on social media.
Welcome to another episode of the Dr. Prince Show. And just for you, we've got another special guest. It's the one and only Ron Scalpello, film director. How you doing, Ron?
Yeah, good, Mark. Good to see you.
Wonderful for having you on.
Thanks.
You're not only a film director, I would like to call you my friend.
No, absolutely, Mark. We've got to know each other over the last year or so with the project we're working on. And it's been great to get to know you and obviously all the great work you're doing and what you've been through and stuff. But, hopefully we'll be pushing forward with that project this year.
Yeah, man. I'm just honoured to have you on, my man, because films is something I love. And I don't know if people get the chance to actually sit down with film directors and have a chat with them and, maybe find out what it's all about, the film process.
Sure.
And just to find out the person behind the name and the title. Yeah,
it's strange with directors. I think, when I started going, I come from a working class background, East London, Bethnal Green, Hackney Borders. There were no film directors in my area. Do you know what I mean? And it was quite a remote industry. There's no real access points. And then when I started directing, you had this idea of how to be a director, and you can reference great directors, and you thought maybe there's a way that you got to be or something. After time, you just realise when you direct, it's kind of almost an extension of who you are as a character. You've got to be comfortable in your own character and identity or skin in many ways, and be honest to yourself and communicate. And I think it's you never know with directing. If you're saying the right thing to the right person or managing actors, it's a complicated role, and you spend as much time developing relationships with writers, with financiers, with actors, and then if you're lucky, you get to shoot. So it's.
You know what, for me, I always think about them jobs and think there's so many jobs that obviously you're not going to find in the usual places to go and get employment. And you think to yourself, how do you get into that? How do you become a director? How do you become a producer? And I'm quite sure I'm not the only one that thinks that. There's loads of young people and older people just think, how do you get into doing that kind of job and becoming like the best director? And, we know some big names, Spielberg and them, man, that's been icons as directors and filmmakers. But how do you even get to start? How did you get into that?
It's really strange, actually, because, when I was about 14 or 15, I was working on Romford Market, pulling barrows in between doing A-levels and writing. And I remember, they started releasing the new VHS video cameras, and they were about £4,000 or £5,000 to buy. And I said to my friend, I said, I want to make films when I was 15, 16.
Really?
And they all laughed, and I think it was a sort of ridiculous thought, really, from where I was and what I was doing. And I was that close to actually smashing the the shop window to steal it.
Really?
I was starting to work out.
You remember thinking about that?
I remember looking at this window for about 4 weeks. Yeah. Thinking, how do I break that window to get that camera? And it's a terrible story when I look back at it. But I sometimes think if I broke that window, it might have saved me 7 years of procrastinating. Do you know what I mean? I would have just
Why? Because in your head, you was never going to be able to get a camera like that.
I could never afford it. I could never afford that camera. There was no access points, 1980s, East London, Essex Borders. There was no film schools. There was no media schools. I think in London there was no more than 10 commercials directors. It was a very far away industry. But because I kind of come from this punk background, which is make your life happen. Don't wait for other people to deliver it. I felt I had to kind of pursue it. And, I went on different tangents at different stages, but I didn't really go back to film school till I was 28. Do you know what I mean? So it was quite a long...
From that age to then, that was when things really kicked off, 28.
Yeah, because I think, at the beginning, I was getting average GCSEs, O levels at the time. I wasn't flying, and I had a sort of a rebellious attitude, which hindered me to a certain degree. But there was lots of street trouble as well going on, and then I kind of, luckily I got into music, the specials, two-tone.
Yeah,
I started writing a fanzine. Yeah. So the money I was earning on Romford Market would finance the fanzine. Then with the fanzine, I would go and sell it at all the concerts. Then the money I got back. So it was always about, in some ways, you're kind of like, you're self-actualizing. Do you know what I mean? Because I felt what was ahead of me wasn't great. It was going to be a really dull job, I thought, at Dagenham or Ford's or working in the city. Things that didn't interest me really, because the expectations of what my life was supposed to be, I didn't really want them. Even at that age, at 15, I knew that there was a limited opportunity. Okay. And so it was all about kind of breaking away from the suburban, low-level expectations in many ways. And then, luckily, I got into a music paper, and I started writing for Sounds in, I think, mid-80s. And I did that for about 5 or 6 years. But it's a long, convoluted story about how you become a director. Yeah. But
I want to hear, though, man.
I was into drama. I was in the theatre group. There's a wonderful drama teacher called Mr. Burns who, was the right voice at the right time. He saw something in me. He was a mentor. He said you should get involved in drama. I was doing all the school shows.
Was this during school?
Yeah, during school. But, so working on the market, doing averagely well at school, not brilliant, and then writing fanzines and doing Romford Market as well at the same time. So it's quite busy. But, it could have gone either way. I think the big turning point for me was, I think I was 15. I'd been arrested twice now. I was on the verge of going to Bolster, I suppose. And but there's a funny story where, and this was all just street violence. There's a lot of street violence around, mods, punks, skinheads, racists, school fights. And when you're a young kid, you got caught up in that street violence a little bit, especially in that area. And I knew it wasn't looking good.
How did you see yourself on the food chain as a fighter? Defend yourself.
It was weird. It was like I wasn't really what they would call a top boy or whatever like that.
A fighting man.
But I would, if someone came at me, I wouldn't back down. Do you know what I mean? And I would lose gallantly. Do you know what I mean? But my reputation was bigger than my personality or my strength, and I didn't really want that reputation either. I
see.
But the character you had to, in some ways, project in East London in the 80s, for us and for a lot of my friends, was to be kind of aware that you had to sort of look after yourself and be careful, and that's why a lot of us hung out together. But the street violence just escalated, really, and then suddenly it's school fights, and then you're in the middle of Romford Market, and there's another school, and someone's got an axe. Do you know what I mean? Running around, and it's all chaos.
Even at that time. It was a lot rarer than it is now, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it's funny, Mark. Obviously, known everything that we've talked about.
Yeah.
Before I said before, people didn't carry knives as much as they did now. Mm-hmm. You knew if there's someone in the community who had a knife, you knew who they were, and you steer clear of them. You just didn't want to go there because you knew it's problems, big problems. So you kind of knew who would. I don't know. It's terrible. People were very, very dangerous, and they stood out, and everyone knew them. Do you know what I mean? And no one went near them. So it wasn't common now where there's a sort of randomness around knife crime that anyone could be carrying anyone at any time, so I think it was a weird moment because I was doing my drama stuff. I'd be doing school rehearsals for like Pinter's The Birthday Party, then coming out of the rehearsal and then getting involved in a school fight for half hour, then going back to the theatre show. Do you know what I mean? I always thought they were sort of different parts of my personality in many ways, and maybe they are. But
did you like fighting?
No, not really. Not really. I mean, it was kind of. I think male violence is a huge problem, it was just, you get caught up in the world. I'm a 14, 15-year-old kid, and it's just everybody's doing it. You know, it was like street violence everywhere. There was either at the football grounds, at the live music. You know, I went and saw the Specials as a 15-year-old. First concert I ever went to. Massive fight. You know, skinheads, all erupted, racism in the crowd. It was like, and this was just like a normal Monday night live concert. And then you'd come out of the venue, you'd sometimes be chased home by punks or skins or whatever the tribe was. Then you get back to Romford, then there'd be the drunks coming out who'd be looking for something. It was all, you had to be so alive with that street violence, you know. It was sort of felt very random, you know what I mean?
Knuckle dusters were around quite popular in them times, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we never got into that heavy stuff. It was mainly street. But where it did escalate, we got involved in a fight with some skinheads in Dagenham over. They'd been up a couple of our friends. We went down, and we were all 14, 15-year-old boys. And we travelled down there.
Why, did you have a mixed group of friends?
Yeah, mixed group. Yeah, multicultural, you know.
Okay.
You know.
Because things were changing around them times as well, weren't they?
I think in the 80s in East London, it was predominantly white. But our group wasn't. Do you know what I mean? It was like, you know, we were a mixed group. And, you know, we had an Asian friend of mine called Dilip. He was beaten up. We go back. It was a slightly bigger group. And then someone's a casual. They've seen the Brixton riots. They bring a petrol bomb.
Okay.
And before you know it, this kid's thrown a petrol bomb into the crowd, you know. And we're like, whoa. So it was, when I look back at those days, I was really on the cusp of, you know, ending up in prison in Borstal. And then I went and saw this amazing film, which was a support film for The Meaning of Life, which is a Monty Python comedy. And it was Scum with Ray Winston by a great director called Alan Clark. And I saw that film and I saw my life on that screen. I felt like I'm going to end up in an institution that I'm not capable of dealing with. I'm going to be criminalised very early, and that could be the road for me. Do you know what I mean? It was a really clear moment where I was scared by it all, really scared by what I was seeing and what my potential future would be. And so you kind of withdraw. Do you know what I mean? You start working it out. If I carry on doing that, if I hang out with that group of people, this is going to go. It's going to escalate and escalate. And it's strange because I look back at that film, and I've been massively inspired by that work about working class characters, self-actualizing, taking on institutions, don't necessarily believe in the political class to a certain degree, for better or for worse. Not saying it's always right, but so it's a long road. But do you know what I mean? But it's kind of interesting, those seeds of how that still informs my work even now. Those experiences.
I'm just really sort of like interested in that moment that you had. That if you didn't decide then, things could have led. You could have had a different future. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, because you know,
it seemed like quite an important kind of decision.
Well, you just don't like. I mean, you look up, you go skirmishes and fights, protecting your name. This notion of your reputation and all that male pride and testosterone that's running around, and you know, and then you look at it and go, well, it's pretty ugly. I mean, I saw, you know, lots of, you know, people broken noses. I got my nose broken at a school disco, and there was one party that I didn't go to, but someone got stabbed. Do you know what I mean? So you knew. I mean, you know, you kind of. And I don't know about you, Mark, but once you create a reputation in the community, people want to target you in some ways. They want to bring you down.
Yeah, or you feel like you've got to live up to it.
Yeah, and I thought that, I'm only 15, 14, 15, and I'm like, well, this isn't me. This isn't my personality. But everything's coming at me. And you know, it was, you know, it could have gone either way. And the funny story was, when I did get arrested, my headmaster, a lovely guy called Mr. Coomer, I was in court, potentially going to Borstal, I suppose, when I look back on it. It frightens me now when I think about it. But he turned, and I also was the lead actor in the school play. So there's this moment where they didn't know if I was going to make the play at the Queen's Theatre in Hornchurch. And my headmaster came down to the court and stood up for me. And he said, basically, this boy's a good kid. He's got a lot of potential.
Nice teach.
And, you know, I got a conditional discharge. I came out of the court at 2 in the afternoon. I did the rehearsal at 5 in the afternoon. And I did the show in front of 300 people at 7:30 that evening.
Excellent.
So it was like quite a chaotic time. Do you know what I mean? When I look back on it, and I look, you know, and I get frightened when I think about it, which way it could have gone. Actually,
That's right. I remember that stupid mistake I made. Like that, I wasn't even expected to come out. Supposed to get 2 years, and I came out, and I didn't have such a great story like yours going into a play. I came out and assaulted this guy back at the college who'd gone to my sister's house and stolen off her. So it's kind of similar to you coming out and sort of, but you came into something good and I went into something quite stupid and could have ended up back.
It's funny when we talk about this, you know, this commercialisation of violence that goes on. I mean, you know, you end up becoming a great world title contender boxer, won all the belts. Yeah. Yet the same impulses that you had as a kid are criminalised. You know what I mean? So it's sort of knowing that energy now where it's legitimate and legal and organised. You know what I mean? And
harnessing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, using what gifts you got.
Yeah. I mean, your gifts are far. You know, I mean, it's strange looking back on it. I don't quite know. And the funny thing is, though, Mark, and you've done a lot of this work as well. You know, my first film was called Offender with Joe Cole. It was set in a young institutions offenders in Felton.
Yep, Offender. We wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, no, we met, and you know, and to me, Offender was like trying to do a contemporary version of Scum. To frighten 15-year-olds that look, when you go to prison or young offenders institute, they're violent, hard, cold places. And I did a lot of research in those institutions. Yeah. And I went to young offenders institutes, and I'd seen all these violent 15-year-olds, you know, 20, 30 years, probably like me, but they were lost kids. I mean, they were kids. You've seen it. They're very alone. They're very frightened. They're regretful.
But you won't see that. We know it. We could see through them. But there's a facade, an ego that they have to put up front. So nobody doesn't see that fear.
That's right. And that facade then becomes if you're not careful, it becomes a hard, it becomes them. It isn't just a persona. And it's a survival thing, really. Do you know what I mean? And when you're left alone with them, you chat to the kids, and you know, I call them kids really. It was like, do you know, it's this bad moments in time.
Nice guy, and you think, how'd you end up putting someone in a wheelchair? How'd you end up taking someone's life and wrecking how many other hundreds of people's lives, family, friends, community? Because when you sit with them and talk, you're like, this guy's a nice guy, man.
I know. I think, you know, I think the most dangerous age really for predominantly young men is between 14 and 19. Do you know what I mean? If you know, it only takes one bad example to lead a group, then they can't get out of it for whatever reasons. You know, maybe there's a chaotic home life, or they're looking for thrills or excitement, and it just gets worse, escalates, and suddenly they're involved in something really hideous that's destroying so many lives. I mean, it's. I
was just thinking of something like after what you just now said. Like, so almost when you're talking about the ages, it's like because our minds, our cognitive behaviour starting to develop between a certain age, and you're going through that strange age between like beginning to see the world different, maturity, you know, here's different stuff, but not only is it outward, it's inward. There's a lot of things going on inside. So whatever problems you had 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you might not see it then. You see this happy kid, but then you'll see the product of what happened when they were younger coming out in their early teens, later teens, and that's when you see the problems arising. So many times we criminalize young people, but it's because we haven't addressed the issues that's hurt them before that time when they've started to see the pain and the hurt and the bad behaviour, you know, starting to come out.
And also, you know, kids, you know, if you're coming out of a dysfunctional house, and when I mean dysfunctional, I'm not like saying like, you know, it's just like you're being exposed to violence, maybe domestic violence. You might be the recipient of violence from a father or a mother. I don't know. It's predominantly men, it seems to me. You don't have the ability to actually know what that's doing to you, right? And you don't quite know how it's defining your personality. And then by you come to you start becoming independent at 15, you've got all this kind of inherited behaviour. Do you know what I mean? And emotions that you can't quite understand. I look back on it, and really my personality was a classic character who would go into gangs in some ways. You know what I mean?
Really?
Wasn't particularly happy at home. Terrible relationship with my stepfather. Alienated at home. Wanted to be out in the streets. You know what I mean? And suddenly I'm finding camaraderie amongst a great set of friends. And those friends I know even to this day. Do you know what I mean? But it really was to kind of get out of the house, really, and get away from it. Do you know what I mean?
And then trying to find yourself.
Yeah. And you got this idea of this kind of flawed, masculine roles you got to be and all that.
That's
do you know what I mean? And you got to live up to these reputations and all these contradictory notions of what masculinity is, and you know, and I think it's important. It's so important that, like yourself, that mentors go into these worlds and say, you're not that, you can be this, and that's what my drama teacher did, and a few others, to be fair. Just said, look, you don't have to be this. You're something in you that's great. Go and explore it,
It's very important to have somebody in your life, even if it's not the dad or the mum.
It does somewhat.
It's someone.
It doesn't always come at home, do you know what I mean?
Right.
If you're lucky, you've got that family, great.
Yeah.
But sometimes, a broken home or a dysfunctional home life can be really bad for a kid's mentality and sense of self,
It's really important for us then, when we're dealing with young people, to make them feel like we do care, like we're not just putting a label on them that they're just bad and they're no good and they've got no future.
Yeah.
But to actually fill them with hope and just remind them that they got potential.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, Mark.
It's so important that we do that. We have that mindset as just individuals, how we see young people in general.
Yeah. I mean, I've got kids now, 17 and 13. And it's like, you realise even that, they're in a secure home, but their confidence is up and down all the time.
Yeah.
Especially with the COVID stuff. But,
that's right.
And you just got to make, and I see, when I see kids now, I'm 54 now, it's like, I look at it and go, you just don't realise how much energy, purity, hope, and drive, and the world is yours if you believe in yourself.
Yeah, man.
If you start believing and pursue your passion or your life, that can be in a fulfilling work. It can be in a fulfilling sports career, or it can be in a fulfilling arts career. It's just like, show them a ladder through and show them the potential and give them access.
Do you think it's a bit like looking at young people, like they don't realise that they're like Formula One cars and they just need a really good driver? So if you're somebody who doesn't know how to deal with the car, won't know how to handle the speed, the power, what the car's got. So it's sometimes like you could look at young people a bit like that. Like they've got everything. Because when you get older, you're going to slow down a bit. You ain't like Formula One. You haven't got all that tenacity.
And also, they've got to have access points.
Yeah.
There's no for better or worse. When I went into the film and TV industry, it's a predominantly middle class industry.
Yeah.
I don't mean that, and I've got some great friends from that world. Do you know what I mean? But it's like, you stand up, when I'd be on set, people would thought I was like a kind of a technician or a gaffer or a grip because I was working class. They associated me with doing physical labour.
And that's just from looking at you.
Just from looking at me, right? And and then when I went on to do my film degree and went back to film school. But for me, I was having to break down these cultural preconceptions of what someone of my physicality, my look, my voice, it was said to people. But my main point is, these access points into all these industries, people have got to be aware of them. You don't have to be an actor. You don't have to be in front of camera.
Nice.
You can be a rapper. You don't have to be a rapper. What I mean is, you can be in music production. There's so many jobs around film and TV and theatre production. But if you don't know how to get into them, and you've got no one in your circle who's showing you how, they seem like jobs for other people.
Yes,
do you know what I mean?
That's right. And that's one of the reasons why I bring you on. I want it for people to see that you have just as much opportunity as everybody else that's in there. And it's not an impossibility to get in there.
No.
Once that seed, you lay that seed of I want to get in, it's almost like things start happening and you go in that direction because you probably didn't know yourself, but you knew you loved films, didn't you, Ron? You knew you wanted to get involved. So what pathway did you take? Because I heard you mentioning about getting your film maker's degree or
Yeah,
exam
well,
or something?
so I did 4 or 5 years of music journalism, which was great, you know, and you know, I was interviewing all the bands at the time, traveling around the world. I could write, not very good. You know what I mean? People thought I had dyslexia because my spelling wasn't great. But people...
What allowed you to get into that arena? Sorry to cut you. Was it you doing the education part?
No, well, I did the fanzine at school, and I started writing them, getting them published, and then I applied to the NME in Sounds, I think.
Okay.
And Sounds responded. I was 19, I think. And I went up there, and it was like a life-changing moment. You know, the doors of a... You know, I was being published, doing front cover stories.
Wow, that's exciting.
You know, I was interviewing bands from like Aztec Camera to The Fall, Public Enemy, traveling around the world. And,
was that opportunity or was that opportunity that you got?
It was an opportunity I got, but the reason I got it is because I was making this magazine on my own.
Okay.
That I generated, and I was, you know, I got interviews with bands like the Pogues. And like I'd ask them, can I interview? And they say yes. Then I'd interview them and do a write up the piece, then write the reviews. Then the money I'd got from Rothford Market allowed me to publish the fanzine. Then I'd go and sell the fanzine. And the first ones are really rough. Do you know what I mean? But by the sixth magazine, it was like semi-professional, yeah?
Beautiful.
And the writing was getting better.
The process one.
And I sent some of that stuff off to Sounds. And luckily, the editor got back to me. And I went in to meet them. And I got my first live review. Do you know what I mean? And I ended up doing 4 or 5 years with them. And, you know, it was weird because, you know, I keep going on about, you know, I'm a Romford working class kid, really. Do you know what I mean? And I'm writing and publishing. The music was good like that. It was a post-punk period, so it didn't really matter where you come from. It gave you access in. So there's lots of writers who came from similar backgrounds, actually, who were allowed to write. But then I remember interviewing this film director, a guy called Alex Cox, famous director, punk guy. He did a great film called Repo Man. And he was the first director I'd interviewed that I felt wasn't a million miles away from me. He was older, 35, but he was really intelligent, had a sense of what he wanted to do in his film work, you know, and I thought, actually, I want to go back to film at some stage, because I knew I wasn't going to do music journalism for my whole life.
Okay.
And so I did do a few years of trying to be normal. Like, I worked in computing for a couple of years, and I was terrible at it. I was like just rubbish. I thought I'd have a normal life, and I just couldn't do it. I was bored, unfulfilled, none of it. So I went back to film school at the age of 27.
Okay.
You know, and then because I'd done music, I knew the film course was only going to get me so far. But I used my student loan to finance my first pop video. So I was doing the film degree course, but also contacting people that I knew in the music industry. Can I do a pop video for you? And then I started to learn at direct, you know, 1,500, $2,000. It was quite expensive. Do you know what I mean? Film cameras, magazines, while also doing all the theoretical stuff. So by the time I finished film school, I'd had 15 pop videos. I was being commissioned professionally now, and I got a degree in it. So I didn't know if I was going to be an editor or a director or a writer, but going to film school gave me the space to really kind of focus in on that.
Nice. And utilize it, open doors for you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't think they're like academic. And I always try and encourage people to don't limit yourself by the ceiling that you put on yourself and say, I can't do something. Because you said, I weren't really all that when it comes to academics. No. But you still went through your, you got your degree.
No, it's interesting. You know, the thing was, I was really bright at school.
Okay.
And I was anti-academic because the expectations of most of my teachers were low.
I hear you.
They didn't really, you know, it was like, they didn't really invest in you. And besides my drama, most of them just saw it as a job, herding 30 kids. You know, there's some good teachers, don't get me wrong.
Doubt.
But the majority, the culture is an anti-academic school. No, everyone's expectations, maybe 3 or 4 O-levels, maybe do A-levels. Yeah. And when I did A-levels, and the reason I did A-levels is because I knew I didn't want a shit job. Do you know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So I just stayed on for 2 years.
Gotcha.
And I remember at the end of the first year, said, which university do you want to go to? And I laughed, because I thought, I don't even know what that is. You know what I mean? Because no one in my school, no one in my background goes to university. Wow. So I didn't even know what they existed or how they existed. So, and when I look back, you know, most of my trouble at school was for having a rude mouth. You know what I mean? I got, you know, being too cheeky, too rude. or hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah.
But then when I did learn to study, when I went on and did my degree, it wasn't beyond me. But maybe my mindset was better for it. I knew that I had to do the research, I had to go and spend time in the library alone, get all my thoughts together, put my thoughts down into a kind of idea of how the essay may work, write the free... Because what was weird is, even though my academic results were low, I was being published in a national music paper every week. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, dude.
So, like, where was... You know, I think it's the state education actually that I was getting wasn't great.
Okay.
They did, you know what I mean? So there was a mismatch going on. And then when you get over that hurdle, because you got... I mean, look, if you look at me, it's like, you know, single mother parent, Maltese, immigrant, dysfunctional, chaotic life, domestic violence, street violence, all going on, right? And I go into a school institution that doesn't really want to encourage working class kids from all backgrounds to really be the best they can. This was in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
So you have to rebel against it. Because if you don't rebel against it, you're going to be a victim of it. And I think I had this punk music thing going on as well, which said challenge authority.
Yeah.
So that was always, and also to lift your own expectations of what you want to be. Say to yourself, who do I want to be? How do I want to live? And what do I want in life? Do you know what I mean?
Beautiful. Say that again, Ron.
Who do I want to be? How do I want to live my life? Do you know what I mean? And how do I get there? Do you know what I mean? How do I ask for help? Go to people. And now it's brilliant. I see so much help and olive branches being sent out for people to come into our industry. And if you show any interest or initiative, people will reward you. Do you know what I mean? They will. If you've got you don't even have to be the hardest working guy. You've got to say, I'm interested in doing this. I like to do it, and then put the hours in. Do you know what I mean?
What changes in the industry have you seen since you began till now?
Well,
Filmmaking.
Even 3 years ago, I was on set. I was on an advert in somewhere, and you know, I looked around the set, and it was predominantly white and predominantly middle class. Do you know what I mean? And I said, you know, and also I looked at, I was the oldest one on the set, so I thought, well, how's this still existing? And you know, you obviously, as we, you know, everything that's gone on in the last 2 years, there's a real drive now to ensure that we have more diversity, more class representation, and a whole wider array of people coming into our industry.
So it's not that people of colour didn't want to be into the film industry. It was just that the way the film industry was set up, it wasn't giving them equal opportunities.
No, I mean, a lot of them. It's a freelance industry essentially, and most people got their jobs from people that they knew. And so you'd get, not apprenticeships, what they call internships or something like that. You go in there with work experience, you stay around, you move through it, or you come on as a camera, a makeup assistant or a camera assistant. And they're really hard to sort after, do you know what I mean? The thing is that also the middle class families knew where those roots are into it, do you know what I mean? So if you don't know where the roots are in, you can't actually tell your kid, go and apply for the National Youth Theatre or go and apply for the National Film School for the camera assistant apprenticeship. If you don't know where the roots are, you can never get to it. And I know all these organisations are working really hard now, from the BBC to Channel 4 to, I think at last, do you know what I mean? And they've got to reach out. I know there's a really good film school in Holloway Road, I think it's called the London Screen Academy. Great producers have done films like Harry Potter. They realise it's a big problem, and they've set up this film school to be really inclusive, diversity, but also class. Make sure that everyone can come into our industry. It shouldn't be just the preserves of the middle classes.
Challenging question. Do you feel that it's been done for the right reasons? Do you think that industries are trying to just tick a box to make sure they're not seen, to not be giving people of colour equal opportunities? Or do you think that they have actually been educated and realised that this is wrong? How the system's been running is actually wrong, and we do want to make these changes. It's a really challenging question, but I just want your personal honesty, because I think that it's necessary that we have people being real and honest about this.
It is a difficult question, And, you know, because what you're looking at is broad organisations like the BBC, Channel 4, Film 4, National Theatre. And all the individuals within it are individuals who have their own ideas.
Yep.
And I think there is a collective sense that there's been an ongoing injustice, what's gone on within our industry, and it has to be repaired, and there has to be more inclusivity.
Yeah.
Steve McQueen's obviously been the most vociferous director who's really pushed that agenda and made sure that, you know, the representation from filmmakers to actors to stories actually should be more inclusive and representative of Britain. Do you know what I mean? Male, female, diversity. Are some of those characters doing it for the right reasons? Only they will know. Do you know what I mean? Are they doing it to preserve their jobs? Only they will know.
Yeah.
Are they really signing up to changing and making sure that we're far more inclusive as a society, and that these roles and these opportunities, not even at my level, I mean, I'm talking at the higher echelons of the organisations, are they prepared to let go of power? Do you know what I mean? Are they prepared to have, I know, the board of directors of the BBC to be diversely rich? You know what I mean? I don't know. So, from our point of view, it feels like it's great. Things are opening up. The long-term change has to be the people running the organisations have to be far more inclusive.
Boom. So decision-making table.
Yeah, decision makers. Yeah,
it should show diversity. Shouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you've reached the table based on your qualifications and your hard work, just like everybody else.
Yeah, but you know, if you come from bad schools and a bad background, it doesn't mean you're not intelligent. It doesn't mean you haven't got potential.
Thank you very much.
And therefore, you know, it's shown to you as a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not a disadvantage you've made. It's a world that you've inherited.
That's correct.
Do you know what I mean? So you've got to kind of even that space up. Do you know what I mean? It's, if you believe in meritocracy, if you believe in people based on equal access to opportunities as well. Do you know what I mean? I get really annoyed by it. I mean, there's a part of me that's coding my language, you know, because I'm like, well, sometimes I get really angry about it, and then I think, well, there is change afoot, and these are very early days, and you know, it's probably, you know, it's great because what I love is my children are re-energizing me with regards to, you know, battles that we thought we won in the 80s or in the 90s are still battles that happen to be fought out again, and it doesn't stop. And I think as an older man, I kind of thought, well, haven't we progressed? And I'm like, no, it's nowhere near the level of progress that we should have had.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You've done some films that I've enjoyed watching. I've noticed that your films are based, like you enjoy the reality, the trueness, the truth, dealing with films based around truth and bringing reality kind of to the screen. Let me know if I'm wrong. So that's what comes out at me when I watched The Governor.
Yeah. My name is Lenny. I mean, I think, you know, it's interesting because, you know, I talked about violence and masculinity. And I always thought they were like identities that are imprisoning actually for a lot of boys and a lot of men. And they cause downfall, they cause destruction, they cause hurt and pain. So when I did a film like My Name is Lenny, which is a film about a street fighter, one of the most violent men in East London, but then you get to know the family, you get to know the backstory, and you know, Lenny McLean was a heavily bullied, traumatised kid. Do you know what I mean? Essentially beaten and to pulp by his stepfather for years. So his threshold to pain was massive.
That's right.
And the thing that was broken in him, do you know what I mean? Which is he's kind of, I think he had a sort of post-traumatic stress disorder actually. And this is the thing that actually he uses to commercialise his violence, that gets a crowd that supports him, and he becomes a kind of local East London icon, do you know what I mean? And I'm like, well... So
is it all, are we responsible in a way?
Well, it's great, that's a really intuitive question, Mark, because what is great about that, the film got slightly changed in the edit, but essentially what I was saying is, why do we create violent masculine men? How do they become cult heroes? And who is the audience who's celebrating it? And are we reinforcing these models of dysfunctional masculinity to make money out of? Because I was reading all the stories, I think, it's like a kind of Victorian pier where two madmen are fighting with bare knuckles, virtually killing themselves for money. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, well, these guys need help. They don't need to be thrown in a ring to fight to the death. Do you know what I mean?
For the people's pleasure.
And I think, I kept to Jamie, who's a lovely guy, and talked about his relationship with. And his dad was a very different character from towards the latter part of his life, and you know, and the traumas of his background. So when I look at Truth, it wasn't like I didn't want to do that film as a celebration of Lenny, but I did want to deconstruct him and understand how did these figures become so celebrated in a way. Do you know what I mean? When there's a lot of pain and problems there.
Yes, we've made them famous.
Yeah.
We celebrate the violence.
But you know,
we are drawn to it.
But you must, if you don't mind me, you went from a tough background.
Yeah.
Violence was a common denominator on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis.
You said about pain, and he kind of got used to pain levels. I understood exactly what you're talking about. But
then you channeled it into boxing, and you knew. I was going to do a documentary about Nigel Benn, and Michael Watson, and all that. I mean, Ben was a very semi-suicidal character at times. You know what I mean? But he was one of the greatest boxers of all time. You know what I mean? And yourself, it's like, it's interesting, isn't it? That you can take that and go into the ring and stand in front of world audiences and find a focus.
I believe that you can use anything, the terrible stuff, your traumas, and turn those around. Because my dad beat me to a level where I explained to the kids, like, your skin would come off your top layer and it would shape like a horseshoe because the skipping rope would have that shape at the end. But it got to the point where my dad would say, who's first? And I would willingly put myself forward to go first. Now, don't get this twisted. This ain't no easy. My dad's an ex-fighter. He's powerful. I was fearful of him. But it got to the point where I could even deal with that. And I knew that after a few of us, he would get tired. There was 4 of us. So my last one was my little brother. He would never really get it as bad as we would get it. But I put myself forward because in my head, it was like, well, I might as well get it done and over with. So I suppose it's just about mentalities and what's happened. And obviously Lenny's used what he's gone through in the way he has. And I've used mine in the way I have. Lenny could have probably been a top fighter as well if he'd done things a bit different.
Yeah. I mean, I did a commercial with Lennox Lewis once, and I hadn't been up close to a ring for a long time, really. And my relationship with boxing was after the Ben McClellan and obviously Mike Watt. There was a lot of pain, you know, brutal fights where people almost uphill.
Got hurt bad.
Really, but it's terrible, things were going on around. And I'm like, well, it was the same argument. It's like, I like boxing and I respect the boxers involved, but it's catastrophic at times. You know what I mean? It's kind of like commercialised violence.
Yeah.
And I remember that, and so it was always, I stood back from boxing for a few years. And then I did this Lennox Lewis commercial for the BBC in Las Vegas, actually. And I've seen him train. And when you're up close, like at ringside, and you're seeing people being hit, and like being hit and hit again, and that pain threshold, do you know what I mean? And you could see people's like wince, arm watering, things are really affecting them. And they're having to still remember about strategy, what to keep their mind focused. Yet something's hitting them all the time. I'm like, well, it was remarkable to see pain and strategy running parallel in these boxes, and I don't quite know how they do it.
I like that.
Do you know what I mean? Because I don't think most people can still have a logical brain when they've been essentially hit and hurt.
I like that.
So
I remember being hit to the body with this body punch. I think I was going for the IBF Intercontinental by this American guy, Kenny White. And I remember thinking, fuck. It's like the way it made me feel, you can't even describe how it made you feel inside, the pain. And outside, I remember my brain just saying, don't even change your expression.
Yeah.
So as you're talking about strategy, things going on, I remember my mind just saying, keep your face the same, show him nothing. In fact, move to him while you're feeling hurt. And you really, my other brain was saying, go down on one knee, bro. Just
It's
take
phenomenal.
it.
It's phenomenal. I mean, hearing that, I'm like, I don't quite know how you do it, because like your body's, most bodies react from pain to flight. You've made 3 thoughts there, which is, I'm not going to show him in pain, and then I'm also going to go back at him, yet to bluff him out. Because if I show weakness, he's going to come on me even stronger and put me away.
Yeah.
And you've made that, what, in a split second?
Yeah, split
and your
second.
body's shrieking with pain. You know what I mean?
Totally. So you going into films, and I've noticed that My Name is Lenny, there's quite a lot of violence in My Name is Lenny, because he is that guy. Offender. These are real stuff. And I was thinking, is there a link with, because of what you've gone through in your life and your sort of link to that violence has helped you have an understanding about what you want to put over in films and bringing violence into it?
Yeah, it's problematic that, for me, because for better or for worse, people know that my films have violence in them.
Because they got onto you for Offender.
Yeah, and I think people found it really affecting and brutal. And I think what they found brutal wasn't necessarily the blood, the breakages, or the scrapping, or, what they found brutal about them, and I always retain this, was the emotional information in the characters as they was pursuing violence. They were like, I didn't want. And I remember I've been around violent men in my childhood, and I've been around violent young kids when I was 15. And I remember thinking to myself, even then, and maybe I was a clever kid, I don't know, I was stupid, but I felt these guys who committed domestic violence, they always seemed particularly weak to me. Do you know what I mean? Because they seem to be and then they break up. Yeah, it was always full of regret. And then when the street violence was around, I'd seen people get really hurt. And the people who had done the violence felt really disgusted with themselves. Do you know what I mean? And they also felt disgusted with the pain that they'd inflicted. And then if you'd been beaten up, which I had been a few times, you go into this sort of depression with it, really. You kind of you've got a broken nose, you feel you've been violated, you lost your sense of self-esteem. So when I talk about violence in my films, it was like, violence is the most disfiguring thing in most people's lives. You know what I mean? The damage is huge. So I never want to. I don't like that cartoon violence in films. But do you know what I mean? Everyone's laughing and joking, making one-liners as they're kind of fighting for survival. I just do you know what? It's dirty, it's scrappy, it's ugly, it's humiliating, and I always put that. So when people talk about my violence, it's not the blood and the bright. It's the temperature of what's on around it that people, I think, find uncomfortable.
Yeah, because I think about people that would watch a violent film and might come to you and say, well, this is what we don't need, blah, 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 blah. But hearing you just breaking it down, saying, well, violence is actually not to be glorified and put out there. I'm trying to show you the distress, the pain, the individuals, how they feel about it. Is that what you're trying to do as well?
Yeah, because the ramifications of it go on for if it's domestic violence, for everyone who's seeing it.
That's it.
Not just the victim, usually a woman, 9 times out of 10, I imagine, but the children who observe it.
Yeah.
The extended family who bear silent witness to it, and then the family has to reconfigure and then carry on as if nothing happened a week afterwards.
Yeah.
And then the man who's perpetuated the violence has to live with that shame, I think. Do you know what I mean? To a certain degree, and either compartmentalise that. And then you go into street violence. I don't think the processes are that massively different. In a way, man-on-man violence is probably the most dangerous thing on the streets. You know what I mean? It's male-on-male violence. So there's a big problem with male violence. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, I think that's why I'm always tackling it. It's like, it's like it exists, but at the same time, my kid plays Call of Duty, and I think most kids have an understanding between cartoon violence and real violence. I don't buy the link. Do you know what I mean? I think there's the odd character who might do something strange, but I don't really buy it. I think cartoon violence, even with kids, they can separate the two generally.
Okay.
Like Marvel films, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've got you. Because like I would talk to my son and say, be careful what you're digesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And my son would say, Dad, I'm not gonna watch that and then go and do something. And I say, yeah, I know you wouldn't, son. I said, but there's levels to this. You can become a bit desensitized depending on how much of the food of violence that you're consuming.
Yeah, it's like the temperature. If the temperature is hotter and hotter, and then your language is more violent. Do you know what I mean? I know what you mean. You got to be careful. What I'm saying? Yeah, I agree.
Because being a young mind, it's so like a sponge to soak in things. A kid can watch, an American film and then want to start talking American. You watch a kung fu movie. You want to come out of there, chop.
I think that's you hit on a really good point though, because you don't necessarily enact violence, but the whole history of Hollywood and let's say Western filmmaking that I've been brought up on these heroic masculine characters from John Wayne to Steve McQueen to Denzel Washington. Do you know what I mean?
Bruce Lee.
Yeah, Bruce Lee. Do you know what I mean? Men who can go into situations and change the situation by an act of heroicism or an act of violence and repair the world. Right? So these kind of troops of masculinity that we all inherit, and there's some in our own heads we've got to try and live up to. So when we have to deal with our own weaknesses and our insecurities, and there's all these weird contradictions that have created this mythology of who we are as supposed to be as boys or as men, and we can't. It's just imprisoning because it's unrealistic to live your life like that. To feel like you can change every situation, that you can mend the world. It's so. I don't know. I find it fascinating because I know those contradictions exist in myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. What's your vision like as a film director? What's your whole thing that you want to leave people with or is it different for different films? Or do you have a holistic vision, like what you want to be remembered as when you finish film directing?
It's a weird thing about it, because I think I come from a class position to a certain degree. I believe in that the emotional lives of working class people shouldn't necessarily be curated by the middle classes. Do you know what I mean? Which they have been in the film industry. To a lot, and that's starting to be addressed. I think the stories have to be more broader, but then within that, like all through my life, because there's been no inheritance, there's no secure background, and a lot of musicians say the same thing. You're battling between sort of staying financially afloat, essentially. So you do commercials, you know what I mean, and also doing things you believe in, and you're constantly playing between. Let's say things that don't grab your heart and you're not passionate about, with things that are really important to you.
Wow, that's deep.
And you just got to make sure you're never too far away from the things that are important to you. So, at the moment I've got a number of projects on, and I'm trying to. It's weird though, because 4 out of my 5 films are really East London stories. One's about Bobby Moore, an East London hero. Yeah. Lenny McLean, an anti-hero, a legend of physical violence. Offender, I suppose, wasn't that, but it's kind of come from an Alan Clark background with regards to scum and stuff like that.
The pressure.
And The Corrupted, which was set in Stratford. So you don't. It's really weird though, Mark, because you look at it and go, all my background, everything that I've kind of felt like I've been running away from, is actually always informing what I'm doing. And so 20 years later, I'm making films about East London and violence or corruption or sports heroes, because the biggest loves of my life were sport, music and film. Do you know what I mean? Those are 3 things that I have always loved. And thankfully, I've been lucky to be able to have a career fulfilling that. Do you know what I mean? So, listen, I don't know.
Wasn't The Pressure one of your films?
Pressure was one of mine. It's more about guys underwater, actually.
That's it.
And it's four guys.
That's a bit different.
Really different, yeah.
Talk to me about it.
Essentially, they call these things a containment drama or high, concept. It's a survival story of 4 guys in a diving bell who are entrapped and no one knows where they are, and they've got limited oxygen.
And don't they go right down to
They
the
go
bottom?
down like to the bottom of the sea,
Yeah,
and no one, and there's fighting survival.
That's a night. That's like.
It was a nightmare. But
That's
if you
the
ever
worst
watch it,
nightmare, bro.
but if you watch it
Yeah.
again, right, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't just approach it as a survival movie.
Yeah.
What I was unraveling was why these 4 guys choose to live this industrial life and make them confront their own masculinity with regards to like the way they are. And they all had, in their story, you get to know all the things that they wish they'd done better, like manage their relationships better, manage their children better. You know, it's full of regret actually.
Wow.
And so, even though it's a survival drama,
Yeah.
the themes that I've talked about are still in there.
Theme
Really.
stuff. That's what I think I love about your films. There's a lot of themes behind what's supposed to be all the action and the drama. If you really listen and take it in, there's so much themes behind it that is to do with people's everyday life
Yeah.
that they can see themselves in.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I've tried to do that. I mean, other people say it's successful or not. I think I believe in people and I believe in humanity. I think we have universal experiences and there's more commonality between us than ever, even though in the current world, you know, for whatever reasons, there's a division agenda going on. But I think that actually, I try to look at things from a commonality of experience and also not necessarily know everything. You know what I mean? The way I relate to the world is different from an 18-year-old from a different background. And, you know, but you can listen and hope. But there are universal emotions, I think, like pain, regret, being good, trying to help. But I was watching like the Adam Curtis documentary, Can't Get You Out of My Head. And there's a line that stuck with me. He says, like, you know, the idea that we're a consistent human being is a bit of a myth. We're full of contradictions because the world is chaotic.
Yeah.
And we try to feel like we've got a cohesive sense of who we are. But always kind of going left and right, you know what I mean? The idea that there's a continual self that we're in control of is not necessarily true. And I think that's interesting. Do you know what I mean?
Very interesting. I think we're more in control of the choices that we make with the situations that we can find ourselves in.
Yeah.
And that's really our power.
Yeah, but you know, going back to all the great work you're doing, it's like getting to those kids' heads and say, just ask that. Who do you want to be and what do you want to do and how are you going to get there?
Yeah.
And
Hence why I asked you to repeat that again.
You know, yeah. It's just, and if you can say that, regardless of what your parents think you should do, regardless of what your school should do, if they're supportive, great. If they're not and it doesn't go with your accord of what you want to be. And it might be, you know, also look at the people around you. You know, some of you have friends who don't want you to go forward.
Yeah.
Because you going forward makes them look bad because they're staying still.
Yeah.
And you've got to know, well, I think I was thinking about this before I came in, like, as a young kid, you've got to really make up your mind, really. Who are the people that are going to be benefiting you? Not just like give you good advice, but want you to do well.
That's right.
And who are those who want you to stay in their world? And if it's a negative world, are they dragging you down?
Well,
and you've got to say, cut the ties.
Love that.
Do you know what I mean? You've got to just move and find the people who are going to support you and bring out the best of you. And maybe you'll bring those people with you as well in time, because they're still friends. They don't mean it. They're not saying don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. But you become part of this culture that you kind of feel safe in because they're your friends, and you sort of reinforce each other, and you don't really move on.
Get in.
Do you know what I mean? It's really hard as young, you know, because I relate to it as a 15-year-old.
I can hear that you relate to it, man. It's beautiful hearing you just breaking it down, because people are going to be listening and taking this in and even giving it, saying, listen to this to their youngers, saying, listen to this guy talking, this is real talk. So because I love the film so much, just let me know what's been your favourite to be working on. What did you enjoy the most when you were working on
Listen,
set?
you know, if you said to me like, when I was going back to film school and I didn't know if I could do it, I didn't know if I could be a director, I didn't know if I could work with actors, didn't know if I could tell a story. Do you know, if you said you get to work with John Hurt, Tim Spall, do you know what I mean? Noel Clarke, you know, all these great actors are Naomi Ackie. You kind of go to yourself, you know, I didn't know if I could actually direct when I went to film school. I was really scared for the first year.
Wow.
So I took this big investment myself, dropped a job, had a bit of redundancy money, maybe 2 or 3 grand, going back as a mature student, starting from scratch. And you just don't know. And so, you know, you make a short film, it's kind of okay, you move forward, you do adverts, you join the BBC, but it's a long old journey. And then, you know, you look up And suddenly, you know, you're on set, you've got Timothy Spall there, Naomi Aki, Sam Claflin, and you've got a crew of 100 brilliant technicians. You're shooting an action scene. I'm like,
what's that like?
And you go like, as intense as it is, you go, if you told me this is guaranteed when I went to film school 15 years ago, you'll be doing this. I would have like
awesome
grabbed it. Do you know what I mean? Absolutely grabbed. And I never take it for granted the role of being a film director. Do you know what I mean? I know how lucky I am to got to those opportunities for people to believe in me and give me the money to make the stories or to endorse me. And so when I go on those film sets, I give my 100%. You know, I don't drink for 5-6 weeks beforehand. I don't drink on set. I'm like an athlete. You know what I mean? I'm like, they've paid me to do this. I've got to be really on it.
Excellent.
And I've storyboarded everything. I've shot listed everything. I've talked audio. You know, it's so.
What's your driving force? Is it the money? What is it? What drives you?
On different days, I'd say it's a weird thing because I talked about violence actually, and we haven't really talked about anger. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, let's go there.
And I'm like, I don't know. It's a weird emotion, anger, and I mean, it's like I think I had a lot of anger as a 15-year-old, right? And I think I found it in authors like Pinter and Joe Walton, these rebellious playwrights. But I also saw it in my street gang as well. Do you know what I mean? And like, we were angry. We were angry where we, you know what I mean? And we were angry what was going on. So then, you look at that anger, and there was always a driving force. Whenever someone said to me, you can't do that, you do it. Do you know what I mean? To prove someone wrong. So I've used those anger emotions sometimes to kind of challenge myself. And it's a combination of it. I think when I look at it now, it's like, it's not anger. And I'm always questioning why I'm doing it, because it's hard, really hard to get projects up and running and self-resilience to believe in yourself. And I look at it and I go, well, why are you doing it now? You know what I mean? Why you make, you know, where'd you go with this career? You know, bigger movies, bigger scripts, less life. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, and it's a hard question that, because for me it's like, I love it. I love telling stories. I love the ensemble casting, but that ain't enough in itself. That's, I think it's still actually based on some sort of class, anger, resentment, based on my upbringing, which says people from your upbringing don't make films. They're not film directors, right? I still feel that anger about it. Do you know what I mean? So every time I go into a shoot, or it's not my driving force, but I think it's an energy that I use. Do you know what I mean? It's not, I'm going to prove these people wrong. I can make films, but it is an energy that I can draw on, and I think I still draw and just. And it might come out of an insecurity that I feel inadequate. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It might be that I feel insecure. It might be that I'm able to prove myself to myself all the time. I don't know. But if you overanalyze it, you just go mad. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
got you.
Do you know what I mean? I love making films. I love them. I love the medium. And there's so many more. There's so many stories like your story. You know, there's so many great stories that I think need to be told and told in the right way. And if I can bring someone to telling those stories, you know, there's no retirement for me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'll just. That's it.
You're not looking forward to retirement.
No, it's just like, I think that's the problem with work. I mean, you know, 3 things I think you've got to look for in life is like fulfillment in what you do with your family and the people that you love. So let's be truthful, financial security. You know, how do you get to financial security? As you know, if you come from a relatively, let's say, I wouldn't say poor, but money doesn't just come in. You know, you're doing low paid jobs, or, you know, you're scratching a living. How do you get financial security? And how do you want to live with all that? Do you know what I mean? And who you want to be? I think they're really, if you can get those things sorted out, because so many people would like do jobs they hate, they abandon their dreams early, or they don't put the work in to see if their dreams can come to fruition. Do you know what I mean?
What's more important to you? Is it the financial comfortability? Is it you being successful in your purpose because you found your purpose?
I think it's purpose, really. I mean, you know, I think money, you know, I think to say that money is important to a certain degree, you know, I live quite a middle-class existence now. I don't deny that. Do you know what I mean? I'm comfortable. But it's still a struggle. I don't know if I'm going to get another project for a year, COVID. Do you know what I mean? I don't know where, you know, you haven't got indefinite money. But the purpose is actually to carry on making stories and telling films. And, you know, and at the end of the day, you know, the great thing about the creative industries, unless they put me in handcuffs, they can't stop me writing. They can't stop me making documentaries. And what we're seeing now with technology, it's democratizing. You don't have to wait for people to endorse you. When I started off, you had to wait for people to say yes to you. You can go and make your life happen now. You get 3 or 4 people, get the cameras, find the actors, tell your story. You don't have to and they will come to you because you're an energy and you're telling stuff that they ain't even got an inclination about. Don't wait. Don't wait to be endorsed by BFI or the National Film School or whoever. If they come, great. Make your own world happen. Tell your stories that are important to you. Find the people that energize you and galvanize you and put it out there on whatever channel on social media. And sooner or later, even if you're like the worst one, my first short film was embarrassing, but it was a learning process. And every time you just get better and better. But if you wait for the world to happen and come to you, it doesn't.
Does it? You got to make it happen. That's what you've done, Ron.
I hope so. I mean, I just think I see so many young kids. I mean, like, you can do this, you can do that. And what I love about that, my kids play, is it Digger D? And like they play the grime, the rap stuff. And I hear it, and I'm like, wow, this is really transgressive lyrics. You know what I mean? Quite violent. And I don't quite know where I stand with it, all of it.
Yeah.
But what my son and my daughter hear in it is what I heard in punk, which was rebellion.
I hear you.
Do you know what I mean? They see a transgressive fuck you attitude in it. And it's coming from that scene. When I was growing up, it was coming from another scene. Do you know what I mean? It's really vibrant. Do you know what I mean?
So our youth say, things are different now.
Yeah.
They're not, are they?
It's the same impulse. They wouldn't annoy us. My son plays me the lyrics to see if I react, and sometimes I do. You know what I mean? When they played that Cardi B track the other day, WAP, and I was like, whoa, the lyrics on that are like really explicit. And like, do you know, when I was growing up, Sex Pistols saying, I am an antichrist and never mind the bollocks. It caused the national TV network to go down. Do you know what I mean? But now, you're like, whoa, we're in a different level. Do you know what I mean?
Man. That's why I think that affects how kids feel and how kids act and young people's attitudes now, because music's powerful.
Yeah.
Music's powerful because it affected me growing up. I listened to Luther Vandross, Freddie Jackson, Teddy Pendergrass, Michael Jackson.
Great soul legends,
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
James Brown, John Holt. It just goes with
Bob
Marley. Do you know what I'm saying?
It was really weird because when I was in Rubber Mug, all the market traders, white working class, tough guys, fast talking. Do you know what I mean? You couldn't let a word slip. They were on you like that. Tough boys as well, predominantly white. Do you know what I mean? But they would wait to the weekend for a Friday night, get all the speed off the banana boxes, you know what I mean? Go down to Caister for a soul weekend, or I think it was the Canvey Island soul scene, you know what I mean? And all their heroes were black soul legends from Candy Staten, do you know what I mean? And, Young Hearts Run Free, and Newford. Well, not like the world, I remember the London soul scene, but it was interesting, you know what I mean? And they weren't all particularly, I wouldn't say they were like I mean, some of those boys, But
they linked with the music, though. Yeah. They love the music.
They love the music.
Doesn't matter. It transcends gender and culture and all that. It's a language all by itself.
As a sportsman, I was chatting to Ambrose Mendy about this, about Nigel Benn. He's an East Londoner, but no one saw blackness. They just saw an East London fighter who represented East London. And so all those sportsmen and musicians from the 80s, you know what I mean, were really at the pretty drastic. I mean, I remember going to those West Ham games in the 80s, and they were like full of racism, do you know what I mean? And like, it was like awful.
Yeah.
But it was like, if you play for West Ham or you're Nigel Benn from, I think he was an Ilford boy, do you know what I mean? He was a hero.
Thank you.
You know
it's funny that, isn't it? It's weird. Like, on one hand, you could go to matches, throw banana skins at the black footballers, and on the other hand, you go and say, Nigel, it's
that's
one
what's
of us.
The contradiction nature of it all, do you know? I remember having this conversation with this taxi driver, white working class guy, Radio 5 Live on, or LBC, loads of racist stuff coming out. And he started questioning, and it's usual, it was Brexit time, and anti this, anti that. Yeah. I started listening, I thought, I said, what did you do at the weekend? He was quite, a right-wing racist, really. Yeah. He goes, I look after a football team. I said, oh, that's great. Yeah, he goes, they're all refugees and immigrants. And I went, so you listen to this like racist, like, you believe in like all immigrants.
Yeah.
You choose to spend all your free time managing a football team full of immigrants. Do you know what I mean?
Interesting.
And I'm like, I don't quite know how that all added up in this character. Do you know what I mean?
I think the whole mindset around racism is conditioning. It's taught. You know, it's a little bit like religion.
Yeah.
You know, you're taught certain things to be a certain way.
Yeah.
You know, Christians, Muslims, so they just continue following that.
Yeah.
And when you come up young and your parents have a certain mindset towards, you know, people of colour, then you take that mindset on, you've been conditioned to be a certain
absolutely.
way.
That's why I like the two-time music.
TV,
I'm 14,
music.
15. I'm listening to like Terry Hall, Neville Stables, and Jerry Danners.
Yeah.
Spreading a message of multiculturalism.
Yeah.
Yet all around us, there's like racism and National Front sending out, you know, brochures at the end of the street.
Yeah.
So music, you know, my impressionable age.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I mean. Sometimes it's the external influence that are really important to you to deconstruct the bullshit that's around you as well.
Yeah. I'm really excited, Ron, to be, you know, just talking about films. And I can't sort of let you go without sort of just giving me that way of just the filmmaking. How do you make a film and get a film out? Because people might think, once a film's out, you're rich, you're this, you're that, you know, and it's probably takes, I don't know, 6 months to get a film out.
Well, you know, I'm working on a film with Jeremy Irons at the moment called Frankel. We've been pushing that uphill for 2 years, really.
Wow.
Script development. So, you know, you go through the process. Sometimes you write scripts, sometimes scripts come to you. Then you interpret them and you say, this is the vision of how I want to tell this story. Then you've got to go and get the actors involved and see if they're interested in telling this story with you, if you're the right director for them. So you get the actors involved, and then you've got to get the finance involved. And you're talking millions and millions of pounds, you know, 3, 5, 7 million pounds. So all the investors have to agree that they believe in your vision, they believe the actors can tell that story, you know, and they believe it can recoup its money. So you do a lot of work before you even get to a film set, convincing everyone that the project's a goer. And then, you know, sometimes you're on the first day of principal photography, which is like the first day you start filming. You feel like you've won because you actually spent 2 years to get to the point where the camera is on the. When we did the Corrupted, our first shot was with Tim Spall. I felt like opening up a bottle of champagne because I'm like, we're actually turning over on this film. Do you know what I mean?
Excellent, man.
And then, you know, you spend 30 days filming it, intense 18-hour days. But it's vibrant. You know, it's just such an amazing experience to be on a film set. I mean, you know, I never forget it. And then you're in an edit and for 6 to 8 months.
Wow.
So you know, I could be working on a film for 2 or 3 years. And really, I'm only getting properly paid, if that's the phrase, for 6 months, really. Do you know what I mean?
Got you.
So I've done a lot of, you know, bits of income for a year and a half. You don't really, when you start filming, most contracts, you get, they don't give all your money up front. They say, right, you'll get pre-production fee for 4 weeks. Then when you start filming, you get another fee. When you finish filming, you get another fee. When you finish your first edit, you get your final fee.
Beautiful.
And then when you deliver the film and it's at the cinemas, you get your final fee.
Got you.
So even though it seems like a lot of money, that's spread out over a 2-year period, right? So you've got to balance that out. You know, so sometimes I'll do a commercial in between that, if there's space, if there isn't. So it's not, and then you might be another 2 years before you're doing it again. So, I mean, TV is a slightly different, I've not worked in TV, it's slightly different from that, do you know what I mean? But it's the same sort of financial arrangements on that level, but...
Lots of people don't know anything about this.
No.
That's why I'm asking you, so they can hear and understand the process of filmmaking, the process of how people get paid.
But also to any person who wants to get involved in filmmaking, even at the beginning, you know, my first short film was called Pit. It was about a bunch of kids based on a school story. We'd play football, which we did, but if the ball went down to an alley, you had to go and get the ball from a little basement. And if you went down there, everyone would choose to spit on you. Do you know what I mean? It was grim. Shit. It was really grim. And it's a sort of rites of passage between 14 and 16. And it's ugly.
I prefer to get beat up.
Yeah, precisely. But, you know, it was a short film. And then when I did that short film, people said to me, oh, why don't you make feature films? So, but what I'm saying is, if you're starting out in the career, do stories you know.
Good.
Be truthful to it.
Beautiful.
And then shoot it. And if it's great, good. If it's not, go again and make it better. Do you know what I mean?
Smashing.
And then, you know, don't feel like you're going to you come out of film school and make a feature film. You might be lucky. Some people do. They're, you know, exceptionally talented, or they've got a great backing, or they've got a great story. Most careers in filmmaking, right? I think start small, 5-10 minute short films. Do 2 or 3 of them a year or more if you can. Tell the stories, edit them, try to get them out, get them into film festivals, get them to financiers, get them to the BBC, get them to the Czech Film Festival. And someone might say, well, I like that. We want more of it. Here's a bit more money. Go and make me a 30-minute piece, or go and make me a... And then even if you don't, right? Even if you don't go to film school, you don't necessarily have to go to film school. But you might decide, actually, all those little short films you've done is your showreel that gets you into the film school, or gets you into the Channel 4 or Film 4 finance scheme where they will finance you to make movies. If you've got something to say and you think you've got a way of saying it, say it. Don't worry about if it's great or not. Just get the story out.
Excellent.
Greatness will come in time, as you know. You go from an untrained boxer to a world championship belt. Do you know what I mean? It's like, brilliant. You did get there in day one, did you?
Yeah, exactly, boy. It was a big, big journey. How about actors? Have you ever given somebody an opportunity that really didn't go through the channels? Because I know there was a rapper that was involved in Offender. Yeah,
I mean, it was interesting with Offender because, funny enough, a lot of them, some of the actors had actually been in Felton prison, and they hadn't. We picked up this car, and 3 of them, like a taxi picks all 3 of them up. And the last time these kids had seen each other was when they were in Felton.
Wow.
And they were coming out of it. I mean, like, it's crazy stuff. They were 15, and one of them, a lovely kid, got involved in kidnapping. I'm like, how did you get involved at kidnapping someone at the age of 15? Do you know what I mean? And he got into the car, and he bumped into his mate he hadn't seen since Felton. Do you know what I mean? And they're both good actors, and you know they're untrained, but in some ways they have a purity, and you just got a guy. The way you manage or direct untrained actors is different to how you direct a young, experienced actor, and it's different to how you direct an Oscar-winning actor. Do you know what I mean? So with the Oscar-winning actors, you sort of stand back a bit and inform. With Offender, they're all young kids, 15 to 19, some trained, some untrained. So I was more like a sports coach with them, like try this, do that, energising up, making them believe in themselves. But when I did Pressure, it's Danny Houston, you know, great actors, Matthew Good. It's more of a circular conversation. You're listening to them as much. It's more cohesive. But yeah, I mean,
I like that young white guy that you got who played who was getting revenge.
Joe Cole.
Joe Cole. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
I like him. I've seen him in a couple of your films.
Yeah, I was doing a film called Here Comes the Summer. And Joe came in for the lead role, but the film didn't get financed in the end. 80 months of work, never developed. Man. But then this Offender came in, and I really loved Joe, because even though he wasn't the strongest boy, I thought he was a great actor. And I remember Paddy Constantine in a great movie called Dead Man's Shoes. I said, you know, Paddy's not the biggest guy, but he showed a violence of the mind. And if you have a violence of the mind, that's intimidating for everyone else. And Joe got that. And so we knew really Joe was going to be this driving force. And he was, I think he was young at the time, I can't remember, maybe 19, 20. And he gave it all. And obviously he's gone on to have a great career. You know, I mean, he's in Peaky Blinders, he's in Gangs of London, I think. But, you know, I was very lucky to get Joe at that stage. And, you know, I still in contact with Joe. But, you know, Joe's background wasn't great either. I mean, you know, we chatted, and I remember I think he was working at Carpetwright in Kingston. And, like, he split up with his girlfriend. He didn't quite know where he was. I may be doing him a disservice. But I remember him saying it was a really troubled period. But somehow he found acting, he found a way of putting that experience into his performances in many ways, and still does to a certain. He's a great actor. And with the untrained actor, it's like, you know, if people, you just got to harness that, make them feel confident, actually. And go with what they got, and also be realistic. You know what I mean, about how far you can go with them. You know what I mean. And
my son says, "Oh, Dad, I'd be great at acting," and you know, I think about it myself. But what does it take? What are you looking for when you're looking at an actor? What you would class as this guy's a good actor.
Do you know what with acting? It's a real. I always find it fascinating. Some people love certain actors. Some people love different actors. And someone say, this performance was great. I mean, like, so when a director talks about an actor, I always think about Ben Kingsley in Sexy Beast. You remember it? Fast talking East London.
Yeah.
And I thought, I know John Glazer's a great director, great film. Ray Winston's in it.
I love Ray Winston.
But I saw Ben Kingsley. I thought this was a parody of an East London character. I thought it was like a really bad impersonation. I think Ben Kingsley's a great actor.
Yeah.
I didn't like that performance. I didn't believe in it. I didn't trust it. I felt it was over stylized.
Yeah.
But I think he went on to win an Oscar or a BAFTA for it. Do you know what I mean? So everyone loved it. So, and I'm like, well, it's interesting that people loved it. Whereas I'm like, so when you ask what makes a great actor, I think it depends what film they're doing. I think actually the right actor finds the right film, was cast in the right film. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they bring everything to it. In America, it's all about naturalism now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like not conveying it. But in the UK, we have a huge tradition of theatre acting, which is about technique, about process, about research, about embodying the character. Do you know what I mean? But it's all about actually making it seem seamless to the audience. So that you're not watching acting.
Okay.
You're not watching somebody act. All right? It depends on the film. It depends on the theatre adaptation. Do you know what I mean? And it depends on the taste of the director. Some people like, I think Danny Boyle says he loves theatrical performances. If you watch Trainspotting, there's a kind of, it's quite theatrical, some of those performances. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you watch a Ken Loach movie, everyone's quite naturalistic. It's contained. It's not, so it really depends.
Did you like The Gentleman?
Yeah, which film are you going for? And what
Did you like The Gentleman?
Yes and no. I mean, it's fun. It's fun.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? And that's Guy Ritchie's style. Fast talking, men in good suits, a shenanigans plot, kind of comical. And he's great at that.
Yeah, he is good at it.
And,
I love British films.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I think the problem with Netflix and Amazon is that as they become international, British stories are getting harder and harder to get out there unless they can reach to everyone. Yeah, but,
we need more film directors like you. I love your films because they come over really authentic and really real. And it's gritty British filmmaking, and we love that. So I want to give Ron Scalpello a big shout out, mad love. Make sure you go and watch Ron's films. They're excellent, Ron. We are honoured to have you on board today.
Thanks, Mark. It's been great chatting. It's really lovely chat.
Thanks, so much, my man.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Guys, this is Dr. Princeau. This is Ron Scalpello. Take care. See you on the next episode.
Cheers, Mark.
Beautiful, brother.
Thanks.
Excellent.